Okay, I think I just did.
Okay, there we
There-
go. Excellent. Thank you everyone for attending tonight. My name is Maureen Meredith. I work for the City of Austin Housing and Planning Department. And tonight is the ordinance required virtual community meeting for NPA 2020-0021.02. As I mentioned earlier, if you haven't done so already, please put your name in the chat box. And if you're with an organization, if you could add that as well. We ask that you please mute your microphone if you're on the phone, and also if you are on the video feed, and that if you are in video, please turn off your video so we can save the bandwidth. And as you know, this meeting is being recorded and it will be posted to the Speak Up Austin website, and I'll have that link in the slide presentation, and it's also in the notice that I sent you. So how to participate today. There's a speech bubble in the menu bar that will be at either the bottom or top of your screen. That will open a chat box where you can type in questions at any time. Please limit general comments until the end of the Q&A session. We ask that you do that because sometimes there's a lot of chatter in the chat box, and sometimes it's easy for me to miss the questions. So I'd like to make sure I get all the questions answered before we open the chat box to general comments. So after the presentations, you can click the raise hand icon to be called on to speak. Telephone participants will be given an opportunity to ask questions. So we do like a first round of questions from the chat, and then we will ask the telephone participants, we'll call out the last 4 digits of your phone number and ask you if you have any questions. If you can then either unmute and say you don't have a question, or unmute and ask your question, that would be appreciated. So like I said, I introduced myself, Maureen Meredith, Housing and Planning Department, and I do all the plan amendment cases. Susan Watkins is here and she can introduce herself, and then Amanda and Amy can introduce themselves. Then we'll go from there. Who would like to go?
I can go. I thought Susan was going to go, but I'll hop in. Hi, everyone. I'm Amanda Swore with Drenner Group, here representing the property owners for Parker Lane. I appreciate you all taking the time on a Monday evening to meet with us. I also have Amy Arfman in my office. She's not on camera today, but will also be able to assist with any questions. Maureen, I'll let Susan introduce herself, and then I'm happy to start my presentation if that works for you.
Okay.
Sorry about that, Amanda. My sound cut out and I did not get the prompt to be introduced. My name is Susan Watkins. I work with Maureen in the Housing and Planning Department, and I'll be assisting Maureen with the facilitation of the meeting tonight.
Thank you, everyone. And so, Amanda, I'll finish my presentation, then I'll cue you in to start yours. So here's my contact information. Kate Clark is the zoning planner, and here is her contact information. I'll also have this information at the end of the slide that you can write it down. So the agenda tonight, we'll go over the case information, how to participate in the process, why is there a plan amendment application, what is a future land use map. After my presentation, Amanda will give her presentation, then we'll open the floor for questions and answers. Here are the property addresses: 1406, 1408, 1504, and 1506 Parker Lane. It's a little under 1 acre. The project name is 1406 and through 1506 Parker Lane. The request is to change this future land use map from single family to multifamily. The associated zoning case number is C14-2021-0139. The zoning request is to change the zoning from SF3 to MF2 for townhomes and multifamily. The property owner applicant is Craig Thomas Austin, and the agent is Amanda Swore from Drenner Group. So guidelines for discussion tonight. Please feel free to type your questions in the chat at any time during this meeting. Please postpone general comments during the Q&A session. After staff and applicant presentations, if you would like to speak, please raise your hand by clicking on the hand symbol in the menu bar. Telephone participants will be able to speak during the Q&A session of the meeting. Attendees will be muted upon arrival and through the staff and applicant presentations. Then staff will open the floor to questions and answers in the chat by attendees raising their hands to speak. Similar questions may be grouped and answered together. Please mute your microphone when you're not speaking for the sake of sound quality and clarity of conversations. If you're having connection issues, turn off your video until called upon to ask your question. If you have questions after this meeting, they will be answered and made available by request within 5 business days and then posted on the website speakupaustin.org/NPA. You can email or call me or Kate anytime with any questions or comments that you have. Your written comments will be added to the staff case reports. You will get a notice in the mail when the cases are scheduled for Planning Commission and City Council. That is if you live within 500 feet, and the notice will have instructions on how to participate in the public meeting. So why is there a plan amendment application? Plan amendments are neighborhood plans are adopted by City Council as amendments to the Imagine Austin Comprehensive Plan. The city charter requires zoning changes to be consistent with the comprehensive plan. Most NPAs are amendments to the plan's future land use map, and most NPAs have an associated zoning application. So this map shows the areas in blue that have City Council approved neighborhood plans, most of which have a future land use map, in addition to a document that lists the goals, objectives, and recommendations of the planning area. This is the future land use map for the East Riverside Old Torf Combined Neighborhood Plan. These colors represent broad land uses. For example, yellow represents single family, and that is the current land use on the property. And orange represents multifamily, which is the proposed land use on the property. This is sort of a zoomed in future land use map that shows where the property is 4 lots. And this map shows how the typical zoning districts relate to these broad land use categories. For example, this property is zoned SF3, and you can see the current land use is single family. And the proposed land use is it MF? I think I may be wrong.
It's MF2.
MF2, so that needs to be corrected. So with the proposed zoning of MF2, then the flum change would be orange. So this is the property here. It's 4 lots on the west side of Parker Lane. This is just a Google screenshot that shows some of the surrounding uses to the property. Here are the 4 single-family homes. This is a view north on Parker Lane, view across the street, south, and this is just the view west on Elmhurst Drive. Turning off that little beeper here. This is the future land use map that shows the land use is single family. You see to the north and to the west, that green with dots is the specific regulating district. And then to the south is high density single family, and to the west is single family. This is the zoning map on the property. You see to the north MF2, to the west ERC, which is the East Riverside Corridor Regulating Plan. To the south is multifamily 2, and to the west SF3. This map shows the growth concept map from the Imagine Austin Comprehensive Plan. And this is the zoom in map that shows the property in relation to the growth corridors and activity centers and activity corridors. So you see it's just on the edge of the Riverside Station Activity Center And you can see East Riverside Drive is an activity corridor. This map shows the bus routes in the vicinity of the property. And that ends my presentation. I will stop sharing my screen. And Amanda can start hers.
Awesome. Give me just a second and let me see if it'll load. All right. Can someone just confirm that you can see it?
Yes, ma'am, we can see it.
Okay, awesome. Again, my name's Amanda Swore with Drenner Group. Thank you again for taking the time to meet with us today. And this is the project known as, it's got 4 single family addresses, 1406, 1408, 1504, and 1506 Parker Lane. I did a brief stop at your last neighborhood plan contact team meeting just to let you know that the application was submitted. It was submitted in July during the normal submittal timelines. The project wasn't really ready to move at that point in time, but we did submit it to meet the timelines. And at that time, we mentioned that we would make sure that we came back to the contact team and still continue with that commitment. So this is the city facilitated meeting. At this point in time, I think Maureen mentioned we are not scheduled for a planning commission meeting, nor are we scheduled for a city council meeting. So we understand that if there are additional comments or questions, that we are still committed to have additional conversations after this. So I just wanted to make sure to start with that this project is not already scheduled for commission meetings moving forward. So some of the beginning of this is going to be a lot of what Maureen had to say. So the property is located clearly within the East Riverside Old Torf Combining Neighborhood Plan, just south of Riverside on the west side of Parker Lane. The property today is just under an acre with the 4 single family lots that are combined under current ownership, zoned SF3 NP with the single family neighborhood planning designation on the future land use map. The property is situated with the single family neighborhood to the west. To the north and to the south are both existing townhome developments, and across the street is existing multifamily. As Maureen mentioned, the property is designated as single family on the future land use map, and our request is to change this to multifamily. The property to the south is currently designated high density single family, which is not consistent with what the zoning is, which is the MF2, and the property to the north is the specific regulating district, which as I was putting this presentation together over Thanksgiving week, I had so many questions, and we'll be asking Maureen, or hopefully someone can maybe fill me in, since this piece of property isn't specifically in the regulating plan, but instead is zoned MF2. But our specific request for this site is for a multifamily designation, as the MF2 zoning category does not fit within the high density single family designation, as the property to the south is designated, even though it is also zoned MF2. So our associated rezoning request is the MF2 NP, and that is consistent with the property both to the north and to the south of this site. We are proposing the multifamily zoning, but we are proposing a townhome project. Our proposal is for 16 townhomes to be developed on the just under an acre piece of property. We will be fully consistent with all compatibility standards associated with the single family that would trigger them to the west. Impervious cover for an MF2 project is limited to 60 feet with a height limitation of 40 feet as well. As I mentioned, this designation is consistent. Our request is consistent with what is on the north and of the south, and what is across the street. One of the questions, I've gotten a couple questions in passing that I'll try to address up front, and then I can address any other questions. So one of the questions we got is about the existing homes that are on the property, is if they are designated historic or if they would be designated historic. We did reach out to the Historic Preservation Office before submitting these requests to ask that question and received an initial interpretation from the Historic Preservation Office that they are not and would not be recommended for any type of designation. We would make the commitment, though, that we work with somebody to relocate these. They are still in good condition. So rather than just demolishing the structures, they are homes that could be relocated and reutilized somewhere else. And the second question that we have gotten relates to redevelopment and what that might look like from an impervious cover and a water runoff and flooding perspective. So we are still at the zoning portion of the process. So we have not done any full site development permits or anything along those lines. But my client is working with their engineer, and as they go through the process, we'll have more defined answers. But the quick answer to that is that this project, because it is a townhome project, will have to do a full site development permit. It won't just do a building permit. So all water quality, all water runoff and detention will be addressed at the time of site development permit, and we will not be permitted to increase the amount of runoff that leaves our property today. And so with that, I'm happy to stop and answer any questions that there are. And again, appreciate your time and ability to be here this evening.
Okay, Amanda, go ahead and leave your presentation up, Amanda, so in case there's any questions on your presentation, we can refer to them.
For sure.
So, does anybody have any questions? I don't see anything in the chat so far. I'm looking. Okay, now I see a hand.
It's your hand. That's how you ask a question.
Okay, Mark. You can
Yes,
ask.
I'm curious as to the increase in impervious cover with the project that you're proposing. Do you have an idea? Is that 40% impervious cover now? It'll go up to 60, or any kind of ballpark for that?
I know that the maximum impervious cover is 60%. We anticipate that it's probably going to be around 57 or 58 based on our preliminary drawings. I don't have a number today on what impervious cover is there, but I could get that for you. But I don't know that number off the top of my head.
Okay, how many buildings are going to be included in the 16-unit project?
So we would anticipate that it would be 4 buildings of 4 townhomes.
Okay, and you say 40 feet is 4 stories?
No, sir. So the maximum height would be 40 feet. So the project would fully comply with compatibility standards. So they would step back and start at 2 stories, and the anticipated maximum height on the property would be a 3-story building, which is consistent with what's adjacent to the site. And those would be, yes, sir.
David by Parker.
Okay, and 3 stories up by Parker? You wouldn't have 3 stories of.
No, sir. 3 stories up by Parker. So anything on the west side, I still do that in my head. I don't know if anybody else does in the north, southwest. On the west side would be 2 stories, and it would have to stay that way and taper according to compatibility standards towards Parker Lane. But the maximum building height along Parker Lane would be 3 stories.
Okay, and ma'am, I'm sure you're aware that the property, Parker Lane is above the property, and the property tilts toward the back border.
Towards the west.
Toward the west. And the properties on the west are below your property. So yeah, we'll definitely have to talk about that.
Okay, any more questions? Checking chat. SF2 is 40, this is Paula. SF2 is 45% impervious cover.
That's correct. I'm just not 100% sure what's actually there today. So I can give a real number. I just don't have it today, but if that's desired.
Okay, Malcolm.
Yes, thank you. This is Malcolm Yates. I believe that there were several previous plan amendments. And so the question is, have you looked at the previous plan amendments and why they were either denied or taken back due to drainage problems? And how are you going to alleviate the drainage problems now if they couldn't have been alleviated then?
So we were not part of any of the previous amendments that were proposed on the property. My client is looking into all of the pieces and has hired a civil engineer to go through the drainage process as part of the site development permit process.
Okay, Mark. I saw your hand up.
Okay, yes. I wanted to follow up what Malcolm was saying, because we are the center property on the west border and have had quite a bit
Right-
of interest
right
in
here?
all of these proposals.
Am I
Yes.
accurate where my hand is?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. I just want to make sure I got it.
Yeah, and your client inadvertently flooded our house when in an effort to deal with the drainage on the back property line. I don't, don't begrudge him, but this is a sensitive area that you're dealing with of those 4 properties. And the water engineer that was a city's wastewater protection chief wastewater engineer back then, Jose Guerrero, back in 2011, when we had
yeah.
the last proposal, said no more upzoning until there was a capital improvement project, until the Parker Lane properties dealt with their parking lot problem, and until the drainage in front of the Elmhurst houses was remedied. Because we were having flooding front and back of these properties. So, following up on what Malcolm said, drainage is a big issue here. And Jose Guerrero met me out on those properties, and we walked down them to the bottom of the hill, which is behind the condominium project to the north of your properties. And he thought there was a waste. I'm just telling you this for background.
No,
He thought
I very much appreciate it. We were recently made aware of all this, and our team is kind of. I appreciate very much. I want 100% to hear all of this so that I can incorporate it and pass it along to our team that is looking into this as well to make sure that we address the concerns before we move the project forward.
Okay. A lot of the water flows down the property line, and my neighbor and I have spent a lot of money getting our property's water to direct down behind us on the property line, not going into your property necessarily in that easement back there. And at the bottom of the hill, Mr. Guerrero thought there was a storm sewer intake. And I said, well, you need to come out and walk the property and show that to me, because my son and I used to run down that easement and then go on the hike and biking trail for years, and there is none, and we weren't able to find it. And so that's when he came up with the proposed fixes for drainage. And he realized there is nothing down there but a dry creek at the bottom of the hill. And I think some of the other neighbors border that dry lake or dry creek, whatever you want to call it. That's where the water collects now. So, and just FYI, this is a an older neighborhood. I think the city didn't do us any favors back in 1983 when they approved Parker Lane condo dumping all their parking lot water onto your property and directed at our property. And that's also caused a lot of flooding issues for us.
That's very helpful. And as I mentioned, we were mildly aware, but have been recently made aware of some of the bigger history. And our team is looking in to make sure that we fully understand everything. And our engineers are doing a comprehensive analysis on it. As I mentioned, we're not in a position where we're about to go forward to public hearing. So we anticipate having the ability and more information to have a more robust discussion on this. I just don't have it at this time.
Okay, and I'll just say, I'm open-minded to the project, and my wife and I realize that property is gonna be developed eventually. We're of the mindset, let's do it right, treat the neighbors right, deal with the drainage. We can talk.
Do a nice project.
Yeah,
Yes.
do a nice project.
I very much appreciate that. And I believe, I don't know if I have your direct contact information. I know that I've been corresponding mostly with Malcolm, but I want to make sure that I do, or if I can get it through him, or if you're comfortable putting it in the chat, or I'll put my email in the chat, and maybe you can make sure to reach out to me. But I'd want to make sure that y'all are directly involved in all this, and make sure that we are able, if we have questions, we can get some history from you, because databases aren't always great and real life history is always better, and that we can make sure that we continue to collaborate as we move forward.
Okay, yeah, Craig, I had met Craig way early on, and so we do have some history, so he knows who I am for sure.
Okay, awesome. And I just put my email in the chat. If you have a moment to just drop me a quick note, then I can make sure that I have your email address to keep you informed as things move forward.
Okay, and if you have questions about the history or anything,
I will. I will. I
Okay.
really appreciate that.
Okay.
Okay, so I will move on to, I see we have two people who've called in by phone. I'll start with the first caller I see listed with the last four digits of 2092. If you have any questions, if you could just unmute. If you don't, just unmute and tell me you don't have any questions, and we'll move on.
Okay, so I don't have.
Okay. So
Hi,
the next one, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead. I thought you were not needing a question. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't have a question. I didn't know if you heard me or not.
Oh, no,
That's fine.
okay, so I will move on to the second caller, the last four digits, 9093. Do you have any questions?
No questions.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So let's see, I'm looking in the chat. Okay, so here's a question from Ron Thrower. To the folks that were around at the time of the neighborhood plan process, what is the rationale as to why this property was designated SF in the neighborhood plan? So I was not around during that plan. It may have been right when I started, and I was not working on the plan. So I would have to ask Mark Walters if he has any recollection of why those properties were designated SF during the planning process. So I can write that down. Okay, I got it written down. I'll follow up with Mark. I guess
Thanks, Maureen.
Paula responded because of flooding issues.
I've also just truly been scratching my head on the property to the north. If anybody has any information on why that's designated, just out of pure curiosity, on why that's designated special regulating district instead of something different, because it's not part of it, but that's just.
Yeah, so I have that written down as well as something to follow up. And I can definitely get that answered, hopefully, or at least a response from someone. And I can email people and also post it on the Speak Up Austin for people.
Thank you.
Let's see. Scrolling. Looking at the, so Mark, you still have your hand up. Is that a residual hand up or do you have more questions?
I think that's a residual hand up, sorry.
Okay, so I'm keep looking. Don't see anything.
I see Mr. Yates's hand, Maureen.
Okay, let me go back to that screen. Okay, there's Malcolm. Go ahead, Malcolm.
Yes, so there is no schedule right now for going to Planning Commission. Can you give any kind of timeline whatsoever as to, well, maybe, you know, March or April next year? Or
I would anticipate that we would be ready to move forward as soon as we're able to complete these discussions. We knew that floodplain was something that was of concern, and we want to make sure that if it's brought up as part of public hearings that we can give an answer. And so as soon as we're completed our research, we would anticipate reaching back out to you all and want to make sure that we have another conversation and then move forward. But I would anticipate sometime in the first quarter of next year.
right, because the EROC contact team is not going to be able to vote on this plan amendment now without any information. So we're
understood.
going to have to delay that.
We completely understand that. We needed to have the city meeting, but we would anticipate making sure that we continue to communicate with the contact team and would frankly request that the contact team not take a vote until we're able to address the questions that you and Mark brought up today.
Okay, fine.
Okay, I'm looking. So let's see, Paula added into the chat, the MF2 condos to the north have a history of flooding downhill properties, failed diversion water system. And then Max has a question, will the city be doing an assessment on the light at Riverside and Parker Lane? Pre-pandemic, we had a lot of issues with the protected left turn, and adding more houses is only going to add to this concern. Amanda, do you have any information on that? Or it might be something Kate through the zoning review would be involved in.
Yeah, because this would only be a proposed increase of 12 single family residential units, a traffic analysis was not required at the time of zoning and is not likely to be required at the time of site development permit. I would say that the city is analyzing the corridor as a whole with the overall transportation improvements that are going to be proposed and constructed in that area. But as part of this specific zoning, I do not anticipate that intersection being analyzed.
Okay, I see Leanne is typing. So
12
said,
additional. There's 4 units there today. So 12 additional for a total of 16. I apologize if that wasn't clear.
I'm looking to see if anybody raised their hands. I don't see any. Looking at the chat, don't see any. Let's see. Wait a few more minutes. Okay, I don't see anything. We can go ahead and end the meeting if there's no more questions.
I would just, if I could, Maureen, just reiterate my point in that this is Well, I absolutely hear the concerns regarding the flooding, and that is something that our team is looking into. And we will make sure that we get back with both the direct neighbors and the contact team before we move forward, and look forward to having additional discussions. So you will hear from us before this goes forward. And Maureen, we will keep you clearly in our conversations as well.
Okay, that's great. Okay, give it one last shot for any more questions. Okay, so if there's no more questions, then let me see.
I see it. Something
There it
just
is.
popped in the chat.
Okay. Ron's typing. Let's see if he has any questions.
These are at least better now that they're interactive, but it's still weird.
Yeah. Okay.
The next step, Maureen, I can take a stab at this if you want to.
Sure.
So
Sure.
in general, the next step will be go for the project to go to Planning Commission and then ultimately the City Council. You will receive notice before the project goes to Planning Commission, but as I mentioned, we anticipate there being additional communication with the contact team in the neighborhood before we move forward to Planning Commission. So right now it is in our court. We are looking at the flooding and the floodplain information that y'all have brought up regarding the drainage, et cetera. And then as soon as we have some answers, we will be reaching back out to, like I said, Malcolm's been my main point of contact. So reaching out to him and the contact team in the neighborhood to make sure that we can have that discussion. And then once we've had that, we will then proceed forward to Planning Commission. And then, as Maureen said, this will be posted and they will be looking into the questions that we had and provide the answers to that as well.
Yeah. So at the end of this meeting, I can usually get this video posted to the Speak Up Austin after this meeting. It should be a fairly easy thing, video to post. So by the end of this evening, I should have this video posted. Okay, so if there are no more questions, I will go ahead and end the meeting. And I guess, Susan, if you could stop recording.
Maureen, it looks like Landry might have a comment
Oh,
potentially.
okay, let me get back to that.
It's bubbling in chat.
Oh, there it is. Okay.
And then it stopped again, so
We'll give her a few more minutes here.
okay.
No comment. Okay.
Thanks,
Okay.
everyone. We really appreciate your time. We know how busy this time of year is, especially.
Okay, I'll stop
Yeah.
recording.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.